Welcome to Beyond Birth Trauma, From Burden to Brilliance, where we uncover the powerful truth about your beginnings and how they've shaped your entire life. I'm Shannon O'Flaherty, and in this show, we are not just exploring your birth, we are dismantling the chains of generational trauma. We're diving into the core of who you are, peeling back layers of inherited beliefs and behaviors that have held you back for far too long. This isn't just about understanding your past. It is about reclaiming your future. Get ready to break free. This is Beyond Birth Trauma, From Burden to Brilliance, and your transformation starts now. Hi, welcome to Beyond Birth Trauma. I'm Shannon O'Flaherty, and today's episode is so exciting. We're talking with my wonderful guest, Kathy Gardarian, and about breaking barriers. And it's about taking our experience and perceptions from childhood into our adult years can either be damaging or empowering. And the choice is up to you. Kathy is an extremely successful businesswoman who came from challenging beginnings. And with deep personal healing work, she learned to understand what was hers and how to turn it all around so she could reach the heights that she did in her career. She wasn't without fear, but kept doing the work to experience all the benefits. A highly inspirational woman with amazing stories. I'm so happy to have her here with me today. Kathy is the author of The Wisdom of Love in Business, Transformational Tools for Entrepreneurial Success, and she's nurtured a lifelong passion for spirituality, even as she has climbed the corporate ladder of achievement. She's the founder and CEO of Qualis International, Inc., a multi-million-dollar distribution and sales company. She has served as a director on many boards, both corporate and nonprofit, and often as the first female voice, including Vans, Inc., the World Business Academy, Chapman University, the Gorbachev State of the World Forum, and the Women's Leadership Board at Harvard's JFK School. Kathy was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Association of Women Business Owners, and her company, Qualis International, Inc., has been one of the top 40 women-owned businesses in Orange County in Southern California. She lives in Newport Coast, California now. And Kathy, I'm so happy to have you with us here today. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here and happy to share.
That's great. So, Kathy, let's just dive on in. Share with us a bit about your birth circumstances and the messages you received from your mother in early childhood and how it impacted on your relationship with men.
Well, certainly, there's a saying, you can't give what you don't have. So my mother married somebody 20 years her senior, and it was after the war and a time when when I was born, I could tell that I sort of was not the one that was wanted. I had a brother that was a year and a half older than me, and of course, I didn't know this as a child, but she was planning to leave. And she thought she could do that with one child. And then she got pregnant with me. And so every time she would look at me, it was like, oh, you're the person that's, ruin all my plans and what I was going to do. And she, I knew that she was closer to my brother than me. And it seemed to me that it threw me into what I'm going to call perfectionism. And it's interesting, that's still with me today. And yeah. I'm not saying that that's totally bad, but it definitely puts you in overdrive. And I just wanted to be loved, and I wanted to say, well, I'm actually more lovable than my brother. Look at all the things I'm doing. And it's really interesting how that works. But
it's really interesting that energy, even as a child, whether what your parents are saying or not saying, the kids pick up energy, and it oftentimes can speak much louder than words.
Much louder. And and it's interesting because it's the first line in my book says, I was born with one eye on the door and one eye looking inward. Wow. I really felt somehow that I knew at a very young age that this was not how it needed to be or that it had to be. But you're
Mhm.
still taking on belief systems from all of the first 7 years of our lives. They've proven in epigenetics. We get a lot
Yeah.
of trauma. We get
Yeah.
belief systems that are dropped down that you think, well, later on you see, well, that might work for them. It doesn't work for my life. And it's not even accurate for your own life. But I have to say, because my mother finally did leave and we moved from New York to California. I mean, we
That's a huge shift also for a
huge
child.
shift.
Anytime a child is moving home or moving countries, like a lot of the kids in army families, when they're moving,
Yeah,
that doesn't give you any kind of stability or grounding or community and things like that. And that constant upheaval. But even if you just move once, because East Coast and West Coast are like two different
two
countries in the
different things.
States,
And
really.
and so my father really wasn't present in my life. He
Mhm.
would call me occasionally, but I was really without that father kind of um, just everything that a father can bring to a girl, because I believe your father is the first relationship you have with men. So
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And I know we say, oh, no, I didn't marry a man like my dad. And I was absolutely determined not to. But yeah, of course we
yeah,
do, because they're going to be like your dad in one way, shape, or form, probably.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting about that is that I think what I didn't understand was that in when it came to business and having things come up that I wanted to do, I think I just believed that the only way to be successful in business is to, you know, basically, just follow the patriarchy, and that, women really didn't have quite the capabilities that men do.
It's
And
really
so,
interesting because in business also there is that patriarchy. So often the CEO or the head person of the business is daddy, and then it goes down the ranks in a corporate system like that. And when we go in there, I've had many clients who are like, "Oh, I can't stand my boss," and it's because they reminded him of their dad or something like that. It's really fascinating.
yeah. And what I wanted to do, it seemed always that I wanted to keep getting to what was really true for me. How could
Mhm.
I go to full self-expression? So yeah,
Yeah,
I took a lot of classes, I studied a lot of things because I believe your inner work is the most important thing you could do so that you can become more of who you are and bring your own gifts and your own dazzle to what the world needs. And women,
absolutely.
this is a time of moving women forward
You
without
talk
question.
about success being an inside job, which it is. Most people are thinking about success. Oh, I have to do this, do that, go there, see that person, da 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 da. Everybody's pointing outside, but really,
Yeah.
you've got to heal this first. And you talked about knowing what your drivers are. Now, I've taught transactional analysis drivers before, so they're different personality drivers. Are you talking about the same ones?
Yeah, I probably a little bit of everything, because I noticed how I am today, and I was so much more. I was shy. I was afraid to say what I really thought I believed. This whole thing, this evolution, but personal transformation has to happen before corporate transformation. If
Oh,
you want
yeah.
to go out and be in the world and be fully self-expressed, you got to look and see what is, because we create our own reality by our own thinking, and we have to look at our thoughts, and thoughts are things,
It
we
really is true.
yeah,
I mean, I was reading this book about business success, and they were talking about the difference of having your motivation being, I'm going to prove it to my dad that I'm not a failure, as opposed to the motivation of, I feel really passionate about this, and this is something that I want to create. I mean, whoa, what a whole different energy that is. You
yeah.
might still have the same kind of success, but what's the underlying energy of that and what's going to crash, you know?
Yeah, it's so true. And so it was interesting as I started business, and I was good at business, and I liked it. In college, I studied business and psychology, and maybe I
Mhm.
should have been a psychologist. I love all of the inner work so much, and I took a lot of different things so that I could. And I asked my mother a lot of questions, like, "What about this and what about that?" And finally, she said, "Oh, why don't think about that? Just stuff it down and don't think about it." See,
Oh my gosh.
that was my mother's way of handling it, and it just doesn't work. I needed to bring it to the surface and heal it. I mean, you have to forgive others, forgive yourself, and move on. And that's kind of what I did. But what was interesting is when I started in business, I didn't realize I still had this view of the patriarchy, knowing more than we did. And I ended up in this company, what was owned by five men. Five men owned the company, but I was the only female in the sales department. So they would close the door of the sales meeting, and the president would say, "Oh, Kathy, yes, she has the highest sales totals again this month. So, how do you guys like being beat out by a skirt?"
Wow.
And I remember going home, and I mean, he would do it every time, like, "Oh, the skirt's winning." I mean, he would say it differently every time. And I remember getting angry at that. And
Hmm.
it's very interesting because then other times, just during the workday, he would say, "Oh, you're a woman, you could never have a company. You're a woman." And this, he was always bringing the feminine energy down. And I started to think about, I will say this I will say this. I do think that anger can be very productive because
Oh, absolutely. Anger is a great motivator. I mean, anger is above apathy and depression because anger makes you get motivated. So we need anger in our lives because
yes,
it gets us up and it makes us start taking action. But in a corporate, there is, I mean, especially when you were starting,
yeah,
major masculine, and there's the masculine and the feminine in all of us. So how was that? It was like a seesaw. How were you balancing all of that, being the only skirt in the office, and how demeaning to call someone a skirt? I mean, come on.
really. And I would say that I went out and I got a really big account and I brought it to them.
Yeah.
And at first, they didn't want to take it. They didn't understand it. And they said, "No, if you want to work on it, just work on it yourself." They really dismissed it. Turned out that it was one of the highest producing one, and yet as much as I wanted to keep showing them that I could do this is really profitable for all of us, the truth was I wasn't even an employee. I was an independent contractor, and they would keep two-thirds of the money and I would get a third.
Wow.
So the more this big retailer grew, and the more money I was making for them, but I was still being demeaned as being a woman. So finally, I had friends say to me, "Come on, you don't need them. They need you. You need to stand on your own 2 feet and start your own." So I had so much fear. The fear was just palpable. It was something that followed me around it was like this huge form that just if I moved to the left, it would go there, and to the right. And finally, I had to address the fear, and I said, "I know you're there, but come on along. We're going to do this anyway." Because I was
Mhm.
angry enough to really be actually just 100% pushed. I knew that I had to do it to prove myself. And
You
so,
know,
bottom line, yeah, I
that's
think
really important. I think when you're the unicorn out there, being the pioneer and leading the field, and you don't have the support behind you, or the people who've done it before you, or enough people who've done it before you to
that,
have something to model after. Yeah, of course it's going to be absolutely terrifying, but not letting your fear stop you, that is overcoming a
it's huge.
lot of beliefs from early on, really early on.
Yeah.
So,
And stuff comes up, and it'll come up, and you'll say, "Oh yeah, I know that one," and maybe the old me was going to act this way, the new me is going to handle it a different way. And so it's a constant checking in with yourself and seeing that you are actually honoring your own self and what you actually want to do.
Hmm. And so you've also said that never stay for the money or anything else that isn't bringing you passion and joy. So what happened in your situation?
Well, in that situation, I actually had a lot of, I write about this a little bit in the book. I had friends that just said, you've got to stop this. You're making all this money for them. You're
Hmm.
not happy. This is not the highest and best use of you. You have fear, but, so what? We all have fear. So I finally left. And that's what I tell people now. I thought, well, I'm going to be I'm making money. I'm doing pretty well. And it had nothing to do with how much I really could do out in the world if I was fully self-expressed. So I tell people, no, don't go down that road. Don't stay for the money. Start to see what feeds you and what actually is, follow your excitement. Whatever you really want to do, that's the key.
I mean,
Because
this is across every slice of your life's pie, honestly.
absolutely.
Get in touch with what's flowing for you, what makes you happy inside, what excites you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I just kept getting one great thing. The minute I let go, I remember it almost felt like the universe would just drop the next thing in my lap for me to learn, for me to grow from, for me to expand. And I was excited. And I remember one of my clients had me go to China to get more product from some factories because they were growing so fast. They weren't sure they would have enough domestic manufacturing because they were growing so fast. So we wanted to add those containers that would come. I would ship them to the East Coast. I'd ship them to the West Coast. It was a factory. All women were running this, and I loved them. They were so wonderful. But then in Tiananmen Square happened in 1989, and 3,000 students were killed in that square, and the Chinese people were trying to say it didn't happen. And yet I was in Bangkok, and I mean, excuse me, I was in other parts of China, and could see that. I could see the pictures. Of course it happened. So there was a lot of that going on, and I had a lot of people call me to say, you need to stop doing business in China and it's just take a stand for human rights. And I was feeling just really horrible about the students, and I didn't know what to do. But again, I do want to tell people you need to find your tribe. You need to find a group of people that when you work with in business, that when you have really critical things to try to decide, you have people who care about you, who are their thinking is aligned with you, and they really give you good advice.
Oh,
And I
listen to what you've just said, and my audience, listen to what Kathy has just said, because finding your tribe is so important. From being a little kid, being with friends who are going to be supportive, people who have your back. Same thing in your group of friends in your life, in your community, in whoever you're hanging out with. If you're with people who are putting you down in some way or diminishing you in some way or taking you for granted, all of these things,
mm,
you've got to reevaluate that because maybe you've outgrown some of the people that you were friends with before and they're no longer the best match for you. Because as you continue your personal growth and self-development, you're going to change. You're going to change. So in business, also, I love that you said find your tribe in business too, because you think, well,
absolutely.
this company's hired me, but maybe you're not the right fit for the rest of it going on, maybe for the job, but the rest.
Right. But I will say it's funny because when I talk about being the only woman in the room, it seemed to be something that just followed me around. I read about this group called the World Business Academy, and I knew this was a Saturday afternoon. I'm reading an article. I intuitively knew I've got to be in this group. And so I couldn't call anybody till Monday. And I ended up calling, and I talked to the president of this group. It was a new group, it was about a year old. And he's listening to me. He says, well, you sound lovely. And he said, but I want to tell you that you need to be a CEO to join this group. And I said, well, I am. And I didn't tell him just 1 year. It was just 1 year after I started my own company. And then he says, yes, but you have to be doing a minimum of $2 million a year in sales. And I go, I'm past that. Now he's really quiet. And I'm thinking, well, now what? You know what he said? You'd be the only woman. So I started laughing. I said, I'm getting used to that. And I said, I think I can bring value and get value. And I have to tell you, this group, I was in it for 22 years. I never missed a meeting. We had meetings all over the world. And they actually did an intervention on me, which I write about in the book, because sometimes we forget what we know, or we get with this really hard person. But at one point, I wasn't in the academy more than about 3 months. And I got a call saying that the Dalai Lama is in Newport Beach, where I live. And I said, yes, I know. He's getting the Nobel Peace Prize. And they said, well, he's invited 6 people from the World Business Academy to join. There's only 40 people in a private home, and he wants to sit with each one of you individually. Do you want to go? I said, absolutely.
Yes, yes.
they said, well, then you have to think about the question you want to ask him. Well, that was right after Tiananmen Square had happened, and I knew what I wanted to ask him. I didn't know what to do about China, but I needed those containers in the East Coast, and I had like 7 on the water at the time, and we needed the product, and I couldn't let this chain run out of what I did for them, because it's how they run their stores. I did all their packaging supplies that they took to run the stores. So when I sat with the Dalai Lama, I do want to share this, is that we're on a couch, and he's the beautiful soul. His energy is outstanding. He's also very funny and warm, and I just was so enjoying him. And then he asked me, what issue is going on in my life, So I told him, I said, I don't know what to do. I would like to take a stand for human rights. I said, but I also need this product. I said, I'm not sure what would you do? Well, he stands up. So of course I stood up, and he put his hands in my hands, and he said, Kathy, why would you punish the Chinese people further for the thoughts of a few? He said, that is not how you create your own reality. Then he said what I think is very important. He said, you never think about what you don't want. Yeah. He said, you always keep your energy in the pool of what you want to see, and that's what you'll create in front of you. He said, and he saw my eyes change. I was like, I got it. And I told him, I said, wow, I never really thought about holding life that way. He said, absolutely. And it's interesting, because I stayed and I empowered those women for as long as I could. I think we kept them about 3 years before we moved things to the United States.
Were you about to leave that company in China because of this difficult person? Is that where the business, I think we got sidetracked. Is that where the business did an intervention for you before
no.
you saw the dollar?
The intervention was somebody that was here in the United States. No,
okay.
This was something that happened just because I happened to be doing business when Tiananmen Square happened. Right. And I was having a hard time because of how I hold life. And to me, I have a son, and what happens when your children don't come home? And then they were saying it didn't happen. Right. So I was really struggling with it. But he asked me to think bigger and to think more universally. And also, now I always think about, okay, if I find myself thinking about what I don't want, I remember he told me that. And I do want to say, because with the Academy, we did so many things. I actually saw him 2 more times, and he
Oh,
remembered he helped me in business. He did. I said, you shifted how I held life. I mean, and how I learned that you create your own reality. So you better think about
it's really
lots of
true.
things.
When
Yeah,
we worry, we're basically inviting in the very thing that we don't want to happen
yeah,
because law of attraction, your energy, we're all just a big vibrational energy ball, sending it all out,
it's
and
so
then
true.
it comes right back to us. And a lot of people don't even realize all of the negative thoughts going on in their head. I call it monkey chatter. And this is the work that I do. I help people get in touch with their thoughts in their brain and reprogram their neural pathways so that you can start creating new default mechanisms, new default ways of thinking and believing and going and behaving in your life so that it's all positive, focusing on everything that you want. Obviously, when we're stressed or in a tough time, we are focused on what we don't want, but this is the practice.
Yeah, that's the practice. Yeah. And I sometimes, now it's interesting. What I say now when something happens, I stop and I say, oh, well, this is interesting. What are you going to learn from this one? You see, I
Mhm.
think we have to ask ahead of time before we just go into all of the negativity, because
Mhm.
now everything happens for our own growth. That's what I believe.
Mhm.
And so something
What did
happens.
you ask? Sorry, what did you ask the Dalai Lama the next couple of times when you
I,
saw
I,
him? Do
I
you
didn't
remember?
have the opportunity to have one-on-one, but
Oh,
I went just enough for him to say, yes, I remember. And he was just really sweet because both times it was a smaller crowd of people. I've
okay.
heard him with 5,000 people sitting there, and I've heard him talk, but he did that at UCI close by. But no, this was a smaller crowd. But I didn't sit there and actually explain any problems I was having. But that was
Mhm.
very impactful for me. And I share it because I think that's a very important statement. You never think about what you don't want. And it seems like that's one of the things that stop people from moving forward. They have all these fears that they haven't, again, this is the inside work. Like, what is that thing? And if you don't do it, I believe it stays with you your entire life. It gets in the way.
It
Just like my,
absolutely does. And
right?
we learn,
Yeah,
we model all of this from our parents because if our parents are there either complaining about the bills or how much things cost. Even as little kids, before we can talk, we're looking at that. We're watching our parents stress. We're taking it on. We're hearing what our parents say without even thinking, and we're taking that on. And because we're little and we're in survival mode, we have to believe what our parents are saying, even though we might know this isn't right. But our
yeah.
parents can't lie to us. So it makes us not trust what we fundamentally know. So yeah, it goes very deep and we do carry it through life. Yeah.
Yeah, without question. No.
So tell us what happened with the intervention. You mentioned that briefly and let's just
Yeah.
go back to that. What was going
Yeah.
on with that?
Well, what happened was that with this retailer I was working with, basically, I had a woman buyer for the first 7 years, and I and I had known this man because he was around the area, but he didn't do what I was doing. I was in the expense side, and all of a sudden I got a call saying he was my new buyer. And I knew it was going to be difficult because he was the kind of, I'm going to say old fashioned way of doing business, but he liked to yell and scream and get in your face and cuss and threaten the business. And the kind of person when he asks you, and I was actually shipping nationwide to this chain. So from California, I was doing the entire country. And the United States is a big country. So I
It's-
was really busy and it was working beautifully. I'd been doing it for 7 years and it was all the systems were in place. So he would ask certain things, but then I would start to tell him about the program. Then he would get impatient, and then he well, what about? Then he'd stop me. Well, what about this? And when you don't listen, then you don't understand how everything's working, and so every once in a while, I would think, boy, it's tough when he doesn't understand that I'm actually doing a very important job, which is all the expense items they need to run these big retail chains, and he doesn't know how it all works. So he would call up, and he was just so difficult to work with. And then he'd have this way of first he's yelling and screaming, and then he's trying to get a little bit of business done. And then at the very end, he goes, when you're leaving and you feel beat up, he goes, "Don't worry about anything. You're doing a great job." But you'd walk out like just feeling. So I actually thought that I might just leave this account. And
Mhm.
I had my son working with me then. He was out of school, and I pulled him in because I did not want to store door deliver nationwide and work with all the warehouse people. So he was doing that. And I came back from Atlanta, where their store support center is, back to California. And I said to my son, "I think we're going to give up this account." He goes, "What are you talking about? They're opening 246 more stores a year." And I said, "Well, I just don't think I can get along with this guy." So every month we would have an academy meeting, and I would fly up to San Francisco. Every month I would go. And this time, and I would always, every month, we would just all men, CEO and me, we would go in a circle and we'd help each other with any issues. And every week I would complain about this guy. And then this time, when I actually thought I was going to leave and I was really done with him, they said, "Okay, no more stories about him." I said, "Oh,
Mhm.
but you have no idea. He was the worst this month. They went, "No, no." And they said, "Sit down, close your eyes." So then this is what they asked me. I'll never forget. They said, "Do you think that this guy is another aspect of the divine?" Now I'm
Great
trying to
question.
think about him being an aspect of the divine, and I'm seeing him screaming at me this far close to my face. So I opened my eyes and I said, "Well, I might be one with all of you. I'm not one with him." And they all laughed at me, and I'm thinking, they're not getting it. I mean, it's really hard. And they said, "Close your eyes again." So then they said, "Do you think he's coming from love or from fear?" Now, with all of the work I did through fear, and of course, when I opened my eyes and talked to them, I had to make him wrong. I said, "Well, he's not very loving." I was on this thing but I knew deep in my heart that we're all fearful. And, and I think too, there are some men that I think are afraid of women and not, and I think maybe it may go back to maybe their relationship with their mothers. I'm not sure
Yes,
they
let,
know,
let
right?
me just pause you there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When men haven't healed, like our first relationship is with our fathers, right? We're
Right,
girls.
right.
Men, their first relationship is with their mothers. And if they haven't healed their relationship with their mother, or they've had a difficult mother or a bigger than life mother, and they've been diminished in any way or abandoned in any way or whatever, they are taking that insecurity with women into the world and projecting it on to other women. And I have had this experience with countless men, not just clients, boyfriends also, and their insecurity with women, particularly strong women who have an opinion, who have something to say. And we don't have to be mean or bitchy about it when we want to express
Yeah,
our truth, but
yeah,
just a lot of men find it very hard to listen to women because we're just their mothers. So
yeah.
very important point there.
No, it is an important point, and and they said that too.
Mm.
And they said, "Look, it doesn't work for you to go in there and fight and argue with him and try to make your point, and that's not going to get you anywhere, because obviously what he just needs what we all need, which is love." He said, "Now you don't have to say anything, but your energy is so strong. You could go into that room anytime you're with him or on the phone. Just think about him and beam him love." And don't say anything. Just you change the energy in the room, and your higher self will work with his higher self. Just do that. And I remember flying back to Southern California from the meeting, going, beaming, wow, how am I going to do that? I mean, I because he's so difficult. And of course, the universe is going to dish up the next thing. I think it was 3 days later, he called up screaming about some price increases. And he said, we're not taking these price increases. You got to get, and we were doing some different products that kept going up in price for just what they were. And he said, get into my office. And I was thinking, I don't, I remember I didn't feel good. I flew all the way back to Atlanta, and I was dreading it. And then I remember thinking, I'm supposed to beam him love. I mean, it was really quite a lesson for me. And so what was interesting is I was sitting in this room waiting to be called in by him. It's a little waiting room for the vendors. And a vendor came out that I knew for years. And she was so happy to say, Kathy, it's so nice to see you. And I said, well, did you just have an appointment with our friend? And she said, yes. And I said, well, is he in a good mood today? And she said, well, he's a little difficult to do business with. I said, yes, I'm aware of that. And, then she said, well, at least he likes you.
Oh,
I said, oh, really? I said, tell me more. That's not been my experience. And she said, what are you talking about? He talks about you all the time, that you had the guts to start your own company, how successful you are in running it. And I remember, I thought to myself, well, why is he putting me through this? I didn't say that to her, but in fact, I was sitting by myself hoping he didn't call me in too soon. I was trying to figure out one pocket, okay, he likes me, and the other pocket, I got to beam him love. But, it was not my experience. So we need to look at the fear people have. And if you're going to be with them, and I mean, with this feminine energy that we have is so healing, and that we can actually be the change we want to see. Isn't that what Gandhi said?
it's
So,
absolutely true. I remember
yeah.
once I was teaching a class 100 years ago. I taught aerobics, and one of the many things I've done in my life. And
Oh,
I went to the class, and all these women in their leotards were out there, and the room was locked. And the caretaker, he was such a bully, and he was so rude. And all of these women were like, "Ugh." And I just thought, and I called him out in front of everybody. I just got just as ugly right back to him. And I was like, look, there's no reason for you to be quite so rude. You can tell us you didn't, it was a lack of communication, whatever. You don't have to do that in such a mean way. And he
yeah.
was so taken aback that I met him where he was at with his rudeness. After that, he was a pussy cat, and he was so sweet all the time, because bullies are like coming from a deep place of deep insecurity. If you're being bullied by anybody, male or female, it's because they're deeply insecure, and they have to make you feel less than. Even if, like this guy behind you, he thought you were amazing, but with you, he felt less
Yeah.
than. So he had to
Yes.
make
Yeah.
you less than. Really fascinating.
I find too that it's like life is so interesting. I mean, how is it that I'm sitting there worried about beaming in love because I think the Academy has the right way to do it? Um, and yet the universe brings out the person that tells me. So I walked in there and I sat down and I thought, well, you really like me. I didn't say that, but to know that.
Yeah.
So then I started. And I have to tell you, every time I was with him, I would beam him so much love. And it was almost like we need to do this because we need to accept people for the way they are and the way they're not. We just need
How
to
did
love
you
them.
beam him love?
I my energy. I just every time I looked at him, I went, no, okay. I just stopped being. You want to be right about your point of view. It wasn't
Mm.
about arguing about. It was like by coming from that energy field, it was like we started to have more dialogue with things. And I did this for about a year and a half. And I remember that Friday night, in California. My son was with me, and it was 7 o'clock at night for him, and 4 for us. And the phone rang, and I had a meeting on the following Monday with one of our suppliers that would tell me that, oh, don't worry, the truck left when they hadn't actually produced it yet. So I was having trouble with this guy. So he calls me on a Friday night, and I never know whether he's like going to yell and scream. I never know what to expect. So this is what he says. Well, he said, so you have an appointment with them? I said, yes. He said, I don't want you to blow him out of the water. He said, but see if you could get him to get on the production schedule so we don't run out. And then he was quiet. And whenever he was quiet, that's when I didn't know, well, is he going to start screaming? This is what he said. Kathy, how sometimes you come in a room and things seem to calm down. He said, do that. Now listen to that explanation of what I was doing. He didn't even know how to wrap his head around it. He just felt the energy shift. And that's what I'd like for people to understand, is how powerful you can be in change, because things seem to calm down, do that. That's were his words.
It's
And
true.
I remember my son looked at me and I looked at him because he was on speakerphone, and I'll never forget that time. As soon as we hung up, my son goes, he's getting it. And I said, yeah, I know. This is amazing. And I
Yeah,
have to tell you, people
people
really
who can't
respond.
feel energy, they do, because
They do.
I've had a lot of clients who've felt like, well, energy is Santa Claus. It's not real, but everything is energy. Everything is energy,
Everything.
and Santa Claus is real, by the way. But everything
Yes.
is real. Energy is real. What we project out, even if the other person doesn't understand that. And I don't know why this is such a difficult concept for a lot of people to take in, but your thoughts create your energy. So you've got to go inside first and clean up your own thoughts, get your own energy going so that you're beaming yourself love first. Take care of you.
Really. And that's where it comes from. It comes from here. And I find that, human beings are perfect imperfection. I mean, it's not, we're not, but we are energy fields. And so we need to remember. And I remember talking with my friend Jean Houston, who's written a lot of great books too, about, I said, sometimes she said, you walk in a room and your energy field might have completed something that someone else's energy field, and it may be not even conscious to them, but they can see that you've handled something they haven't. She says, and then all of a sudden they're going to be intimidated by you or not support you or that sort of thing. And she's really big on telling women have to support each other
Oh,
and
yeah.
just keep being open and learning. And because it's and I don't think it ever goes away. I mean, I
No,
practice all the time. Now I
yeah,
just practice kindness. I don't have to be right. I want to be happy. I don't want to just be right. I want to
it's true.
make it flow and just have your life be what you create is much more important. And
I
so,
know in a
yeah.
lot of self-development workshops, when there's lots of people, one exercise is that they have everybody get up and just kind of walk around the room to see who they migrate towards and who are
Oh,
you connecting with. And because
that's good.
usually you'll connect with someone who has a similar energy. I mean, Kathy and I met in a writer's course on a boat,
Yeah,
and there was
yeah.
quite a few people in this course. I connected with a number of people, but can't connect with everybody. But Kathy and I connected because we have a similar mindset, right? And had
Yeah.
many wonderful conversations there together. And I thought, oh, yeah, she'd be wonderful to have as a guest on my show. It was really, really great. And so, did this man, what happened?
Well, what happened was about a month later after we had that conversation. There's a joke about my book when I was when I was working for these five guys. They wanted me to take on the line of toilet paper, and I didn't want to do it. I said, I don't know. I said, just it's boring. He said, well, everybody uses it. I said, I don't care. I don't want to do it, and I didn't do it. So he comes to town, and my son was there with him earlier, and I came in just a teeny bit later, and I could tell my son was looking at me like, make sure you give this guy space. I mean, don't turn off. And because he knew ahead of time than what I knew. And so this guy said, well, I've decided I'm going to give you some more product for our stores nationwide. And I go, yeah. And I said, what kind of products? He said, anything I want. I said, no, not anything you want. Because I had all these distribution centers, and I like things that moved, and I didn't want any dogs sitting there not doing anything. So I told him, no, not anything. So he gets this smile on his face, and he said, well, it's worth about $5 million a year in actual additional sales. And I said, well, what is it? And he says, toilet paper. And it was almost like he knew the joke, but it was more than toilet. It was all of their supplies for all of their stores. I mean, so who does that? People do business with people they like, and business is relationship. Everything's relationship. But
Everything
people
is.
can't forget that business is too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So all he did
fascinating.
was just kept giving us more business. And then when he left, we got 12,000 other stores that we didn't have before. I mean, this is how you become successful and then I could see that the whole game, and then I was the only woman on the board of Vans Shoes, never had a woman. And I served for 10 years, and it was hard at first, just ego banging around the table, until you raise your hand and say something, and you watch the energy shift. We really have to be very clear that what energetic beings we are, and then we can learn to actually make a difference in the world and be successful. And then it's fun. It's
It's
fun.
interesting that you talked about that initial resistance about the toilet paper, but then when he
Yeah,
came to you in a different way and you could
yeah,
see the bigger picture, how you could look at your own resistance and see the bigger picture. Because
yeah.
sometimes our resistance is like this. But if we
Right.
get out of our own way and open up to the expansive possibilities, and often it is just about getting out of our own way. And I
Absolutely.
think getting a predominantly male filled field to be able to sit back and listen to you and really hear what you had to say and what you brought
Yeah,
really demonstrates a very powerful energy there because we all have feminine and masculine energy in both of us, right? We all do. The men
absolutely.
have the feminine, the women
Yeah,
have the masculine, and it's a great way to find the balance. You might not be balanced in every aspect of your life. And
right.
maybe in the business aspect, you might have needed to have more of your masculine energy.
Trust me, I used a lot of it. When my back was against the wall, my masculine came out. I could tell that. But
Mhm.
I always worked on the balance and knowing how powerful the feminine energy is, which is why I think it's so important today. We need more women on corporate boards
Yeah.
to balance that. They've already proven they're going to be more successful when there are women on boards, but I think but just the energy that women bring is so healing. It's a very, very powerful healing force, and when we use it in the right way, and I really
Mhm.
encourage women to look inside so that they become more balanced.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Why don't we have a few downloads now? Because at the end of every show, I like to give everybody some downloads. And basically, I'm going up to connect to source energy, and I get into a theta brainwave state, and I'm coming down into your collective pineal glands. And if you just want to receive, put your hands up and open and then lower them down so they're resting on your table or desk or legs so that you're comfortable. Uncross your legs, have a sip of water if you need to. It's always good to be hydrated. You can close your eyes and just receive. And when I say the download, if you'd like to receive it, just say yes out loud. Okay, here we go. Let me just get connected. I know what it feels like to have my feminine and masculine sides in balance. Say yes out loud if you'd like to receive.
Yes.
I know what it feels like to be accountable.
Yes.
I know what it feels like to remember what I know.
Yes.
I know what it feels like to trust my intuition.
Yes.
I know it's more important to be happy than right.
Yes.
I know how to follow my excitement and my passion.
Yes.
I know what it feels like and how to beam love to others.
Yes.
I know what it feels like to allow my current vision to expand.
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Mhm.
How do you all feel from that? These downloads, what we're doing, we all have neural pathways in our brains, and they act as highways because you've been practicing your default beliefs your whole lives. So, however old you are, they hold our thoughts, our words, our behavior, so that if you're somebody, when you're faced with conflict, you contract and get quiet and shy, that's a pattern. That's something that you've learned. You can unlearn that and train your brain to respond in a different way. This is the inside work. This is the inside work that I teach people and help people do in all of my healing sessions. And there is a PDF available, just these last parts of the shows with all of these downloads. That's for free. That's available on my website. Oh gosh, I've forgotten all this time. Kathy, how do people find you? Tell us your website, please.
Well, the best website is the book. It's thewisdomofloveinbusiness.com. And there's a lot of other things I've done on there and other speeches I've done. And the book is available at Amazon. And it actually, I'm proud and very honored to say in Los Angeles, they're making a film of my book now.
Oh, yeah.
They feel like it's time to bring this kind of story forward. So
And is it going to be called The Wisdom of Love in Business, or we don't know?
we don't know. We're not sure of the title yet. I have a feeling what it is, but I'm going to wait
Yeah,
before I
okay.
can say that. Well,
And
yeah.
if you want to get in touch with me, you can find me on shannonbtb.com or shannonoflaherty.com. And I offer a free 20-minute call so that you can connect with me. We can have a chat, even if you just want an aha moment or want to pick my brain about something or see if you want to work with me. So, if there was one message from this whole conversation, Kathy, that you'd like our viewing and listening audience to take away from today, what would that be?
Well, I think we have to keep some room in your heart for the unimaginable. We have to go where the love is, and we're all born in love and light, and that's where we should be living. So that would be just be loving. Yeah.
Be loving. Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And it's been so wonderful to have you here and having this wonderful conversation and all of your wisdom in business and all of the things that you've overcome in your life and taken with you and moved past the fear is absolutely fantastic.
Mm.
So I leave you all with this, everybody. Find your inner heart space and beam all that love out to everybody that you need to feel love. If you have a conflict with somebody, send them love and just wait and see what's happened. I've been in
Mm.
arguments with people before and felt like I needed to be angry for a while. Like, don't suppress your emotions. Feel what you need to feel, own it, feel it. And then as soon as you don't need to feel that anymore, then start to send that other person love because immediately it shifts the
It
energy.
shifts it.
Really, really
Absolutely.
does.
Yeah.
It really does. So we know that you can do this for yourself and for others. And let's just create a more beautiful world by beaming out that love energy. Thank you so much for being with us today, Kathy. And
Thank
thanks,
you.
everybody. See you next time. You have been listening to Beyond Birth Trauma From Burden to Brilliance with Shannon O'Flaherty on Transformation Talk Radio. On the second Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, we connect the dots between your ancestors, your birth, and the patterns that keep you stuck, guiding you to a place of profound healing and unstoppable brilliance. By examining and healing your cellular imprint from birth of how you perceive and respond to the world and the challenges that are created in your day-to-day life, we can begin to heal and live more balanced and fulfilling lives. For more information, visit shannonbtb.com. That's shannonbtb.com.